everybody, here we go. Flea Market Fantasy number 24. Yes. This is your co-host, Mike L. And as always, I'm joined by...
Michael Dell of the LCS Hockey Radio Show.
That's right. And this week's pick is once again mine. And I've decided to go with Marvel's competitor, DC Comics. And I picked Secret Origins number 36 from January 1989, featuring Green Lantern, Poison Ivy, and I forgot about this one. We've also got the secret origin of Pieface.
Yes. Of that racially insensitive nickname, Pieface.
Yikes. Yeah, we'll get into that later.
But anyway, Michael, usually I do a lot of research when we do books, but I really didn't do much for this one. Because
no.
But can you tell me how long Secret Origins was around? Because I had no idea this was even a thing. Like, I didn't know this was even a book.
Okay, yeah. Well, Secret Origins, this is, I think, at least the second volume. There was a run in the 1970s, and basically what it was they would kind of redo the origins of the various Marvel or DC superheroes, Superman, Batman, whoever, Huntress, Green Lantern. And then in 1986, I believe it was, they decided to revive it because after DC did the Crisis on Infinite Earths, which you're familiar with, Mike Dell, yes. Right?
Unfortunately.
They revised almost everyone's origin, right? So they had to, inform everybody of what these new origins were. And so starting with, although it was confusing because Secret Origins, like the first year or so, they were still doing the old pre-Crisis origins. It was very confusing.
Wait, you mean something about DC's continuity was confusing?
Yeah.
I don't find that's hard to believe.
I don't believe that. Just work with me on this if you can. Right. Okay. So basically, they do Superman, they do Batman, and then they're always throwing in these minor characters like Doll Man and people like that as they go along. So here we are, 3 years into the Doll Man. I know
who the hell is Doll Man?
The Human Bomb, all these great old classic DC characters. Anyway,
all right.
So it took them a while, but finally they got to Green Lantern here, and I'm not sure if there's a theme of why they also threw Poison Ivy into this issue, but they did, and that's the main. That's the reason
they're both green.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, really, that's it. They're green. There's nothing else they have in common. But yeah, the reason I picked this issue is because it's written by Neil Gaiman of Sandman fame, a very early DC work for him. And so that's why I picked it.
Well, the Poison Ivy story is written.
Yes, the Poison Ivy story. Right. Sorry. Written by Neil Gaiman. The Green Lantern story is just, it just happens to be there. So we're going to talk about that as well. I know the Pieface story is your favorite, probably.
Yes,
in the main
obviously.
But we'll get to that later. But so that's pretty much it. And so Secret Origins, and every once in a while they'll revive it. Like every couple of years, every 5 or 10 years, they'll bring it back. And DC kind of uses that as their go-to for any time they're doing an origin, they'll call it Secret Origin. That's just the way they are, so.
Now you said originally they had a volume in the 70s, and
right.
I think you said they redid the origins, but you don't mean like they redid them after post-Crisis. You mean they like just gave a different take on the same origin story.
They would just redo it, but it's like a remake. They would just expand on it, redraw, but not change it really.
Yes, but in the second volume, they're like changing, because this Poison Ivy origin is different here than her original origin.
Yeah, in fact, as far as I know, it's completely different. Like she even has a different name here, which she references, right? Like he asked her, he says, I can't remember the name, but it was like something Rose. And she's like, I just make up things sometimes. But if you go back and read her origin from like the 60s, that was her origin. The other origin, different name and all that stuff. So they're kind of just starting from scratch here.
All right, well, let's talk about the cover real quick, because we forgot to talk about the cover last week, and I always want to talk about the cover. But it's drawn by Mike Carlin. Really? Oh, I don't know much about him, but apparently he's no relation to George Carlin.
No relation.
Okay.
But it's here. I got to point out. So Mike Carlin is not really known as a penciler, but he was the editor of Superman for a very long time, and he's still at DC. I think he's like one of their sort of higher ups at DC. I'm not a big fan of him, to be honest, because I don't think his run on Superman was ever really good. But this is a pretty simple cover, but you also notice that it says Eduardo, the second name there is Eduardo Barreto. So I'm assuming Eduardo Barreto kind of cleaned it up and made it look good. I'm assuming.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, this is like the cover's just close up, extreme close up of Green Lantern and like Poison Ivy trying to kiss him, her arm
Right.
wrapped around him, and you see his little power ring there glowing in the bottom. But this is just classic comic book art. Like this is perfect, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to assume again that it's Eduardo. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Eduardo Barreto,
No.
but he took over from George Perez on Teen Titans. So he's kind of just a classic DC artist, So I'm assuming he made this look as good as it does. So
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with either of them.
yeah.
So all right. So yeah, that's the cover, and then the first story is Green Lantern: The Secret Origin of Green Lantern. But here's my question, Michael.
Okay.
What in this? Well, maybe we should talk about the whole story first of all.
Sure.
All right, yeah, let's begin. But the first page of the story, it's actually a flashback to the famous issue written by Denny O'Neil and drawn by Neil Adams, where Green Lantern and Green Arrow confront racism.
Right.
And more specifically, their own lack of activism to do something to better the quality of life for African Americans in the country.
Right.
Because there's the famous quote where the fella's telling Green Lantern, I see you doing all kind of stuff for the orange skins and the purple skins and all that other, but what are you going to do for the black skins?
Right.
Are you going to help us out? And Green Lantern, he's all ashamed.
Right.
Because the guy says, "Answer me that, Mr. Green Lantern." That's great. It's a classic issue, but I've never read it. Have you read it?
Yeah. I've read most of the classic Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run. Yeah.
Now, because I'm interested to know, because then we jump. Okay, so we have that first page taken from that classic issue. Now we get into our story with
Right.
And who are the creators for this one? The writer is James Owsley.
Yes.
And the penciler is M.D. Bright.
Right.
Are you familiar with either of those fellows?
Yes. So James, I'm not sure if it's Owsley or Owsley, but I'll say Owsley. So James Owsley is, so interesting enough, James Owsley is black or African American. He started out, I believe, as an editor at Marvel, and he was actually editor of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
During the mid 80s. So
And I seem to recall, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he had something to do with Peter David getting into writing books. Wasn't he the editor that gave Peter David a shot?
Yes, I believe he hired him. And he's also the guy that was sort of coerced into firing Tom DeFalco from writing Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
And so he was in the middle of this huge thing with Jim Shooter as well, because it was basically Jim Shooter that kind of suggested to him over and over again that he should fire Tom DeFalco. But Tom DeFalco was also his boss. And so when he fired Tom DeFalco, that kind of blacklisted him in the eyes of Tom DeFalco. And then Jim Shooter didn't back up his own, you know what I mean? Like he didn't support Jim Owsley. And so there was this huge debacle and blah, blah, blah. So eventually he ended up becoming a writer. He changed his name to Christopher Priest. And he ended up writing things like Black Panther and some other things. And he's a fairly good writer. But yeah, so this is an early work by him.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, did we mention the year? This is 1989.
Yeah, 1989. Okay. Yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah. January.
So we get into the actual story that Mr. Owsley here wrote, and I'm interested, Michael. Do you remember, because they show some dialogue coming off the page? The first picture we see is a young African American fella with red glasses, and he's peeking out from behind a chimney. And then we have dialogue coming in from off the page, and he says, "Okay, maybe I have been a dummy. So tell me, how do I help?" I'm guessing that's Green Lantern. And then the other guy is telling him, "I'm no advice committee," and then he gets it. But is that actual dialogue from the Denny O'Neil issue? Because I'm guessing it wasn't. Because it seems like that's kind of hokey dialogue, and I'm guessing it probably wasn't taken from that.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'd have to. I mean, we could dig it up. I could find out, but I don't think so. Yeah,
but it's all right. I was just wondering if you knew.
Okay.
So yeah, this kid witnessed that exchange. Right. And then right when Green Lantern's about to leave, he pops out and says, "Hey, Mr. Green Lantern," and he's talking to him. Yeah, so go ahead, Michael. Then you take it away.
So basically so they have a very quick exchange, and Green Lantern basically takes off. And so this kid, he's like, he's excited because he just got to meet Green Lantern, his hero or whatever. And then we cut to several years later, and now this guy's grown up to be he's a young man. And he, wakes up and he's going, and all around his room, he's got Hal Jordan Green Lantern posters.
His room is just decorated with everything Green Lantern. It basically looks like my room dedicated to Oscar.
Okay.
Just imagine, this guy loves Green Lantern as much as I love Oscar.
Yep.
Even his sheets, Michael, even his blankets, his sheets are white and his blankets green, you know?
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's great.
He keeps it up. His walls are green.
The paint, you're right. The paint on the wall. Yeah, you're right. Everything is green.
He's even sleeping in a Green Lantern t-shirt.
Mm-hmm. This is giving me ideas for my house.
This kid loves the Green Lantern. Holy hell. And keep in mind, he's in his 20s now. It's almost as sad as a fellow in his mid-40s being obsessed with Oscar.
Yeah.
Almost.
And that's, DC's like that. They have a lot of hero worship with their characters like Flash and, Superman and all that. So it's kind of cool.
I remember in Guardians of the Galaxy, our buddy Vance Astro was obsessed with Captain America. He had like Captain America pictures on his wall and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Forgot about that.
Yeah. But apparently this kid, his name is Chip. And now he's grown up to be like a aeronautical engineer or a designer of aircrafts and stuff. And like he answers the phone's ringing. And the guy on the other end's yelling, "Hey, did you get a pilot yet? We're supposed to test this plane. We need this pilot." And he just says, "Yeah," and he walks out. Yeah. So then what else? How does Hal Jordan come into the picture, Michael?
So, and that's the thing is, the one thing, and I'll get to this later, but the awkward thing about this story is I think it's happening in between issues of Action Comics Weekly. And so apparently Hal Jordan is down on his luck, and his reputation has been ruined, but I don't know how or by who, but he mentions it's been trashed by the Guardians of the Universe's enemies, but I'm not sure who that means, so I don't really know exactly what's going on. But basically he's sleeping he's not sleeping in his car, but he's in a traffic jam, and he's kind of having flashes of people sort of scolding him. Like,
it's Green Arrow. He's
the second one's Green Arrow.
His buddy Green Arrow was yelling at him, and he had a fight with Green Arrow, and he's feeling remorse and regret. Right. Yeah. But
I don't know who the first one is. I'm looking for help I can't give Hal. Sorry. I don't know who that is.
Oh. Yeah, we're going to say that is Green Arrow's buddy, Jimmy.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Nameless.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, so anyway, this cop sort of like he's in a traffic jam, but he's asleep, and so he wakes him up. He starts on his way. He's kind of narrating with his thought bubbles about what's going on with the status quo. Like we said, he's kind of blacklisted, so he's looking for a job. So then he goes knocking on this guy's door because of this ad that he's seen in the paper, and they're looking for like a test pilot.
Yep.
So he goes to the door, and the kid, who's now an adult from the second page of the story, he answers the door, and right away he knows that it's Green Lantern. He's like, "You?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah." He's like, "You're Green Lantern." He's like, "No, I'm not." Bye. And he just walks out the door. And he holds up his picture that he's got of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, right? And so he recognizes this guy.
Yeah, he doesn't say he's Green Lantern right away. He goes, "You." And he says, and Green Lantern, Hal Jordan's like, "What's going on?" He says, "Just wait there a minute." So Hal Jordan follows him into the house or the apartment. And this guy's rummaging all through his room to find a picture of Green Lantern. "Hey, buddy, you have pictures of him all over your wall."
That's a good point.
You probably have his face tattooed on your inner thigh. Why do you have to be digging under the bed to find an old 8x10 glossy of Green Lantern?
Yeah.
Literally, his picture's everywhere.
That's a good point, yeah.
And so then when he finds the picture, he looks at it and he goes, "You're a Green Lantern."
Right. No, weird. I'm not. Bye.
Yes. So that's when Hal Jordan leaves and he hops back in his car. But there's still so much traffic, Michael, that Chip's able to chase him down, even though he's still in his robe and underpants.
Right. And then so basically he confronts him again, and then Green Lantern, and then Hal Jordan's like, "Oh, what the heck?" He's like, "Okay, you're right. I am Green Lantern. Let's go someplace where we can talk."
Yeah, he just shows him the ring then. He's like, "Here, look, I got my ring." Now he wasn't wearing the ring. Where did the ring come from? Does it just does it just magically appear on his finger? Or?
I think he makes it like invisible to other people's eyes. I think that's
okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about Green Lantern really.
Have you ever read a Green Lantern story?
Maybe when I was a little kid. I think I have a couple issues, but I know that for some reason he can't. A number 2 pencil would kill him because he can't do anything against a yellow, right?
Yes. I thought you were confusing him with the Alan Scott Green Lantern for a minute because
Oh, wood. That's right. Yeah, wood.
Yeah, 'cause wood. He can't do anything against wood. So technically, a yellow number 2 pencil would kill both of them. Yeah. Anyway.
And again, I've said this many times. I just don't. Well, I was going to say I don't like superheroes that get their power from jewelry, but then right away I thought of Underdog, and I love Underdog.
Okay. Wait,
really,
how does
Underdog doesn't technically get his power from jewelry though. He gets it from narcotics. He keeps a pill inside the ring, and he takes the pill, and then he gets strong. So, all right, I can still make this point. If you're a superhero and you get your powers from jewelry, you're not cool.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Green Lantern's always been one of my favorites, so I love him. I got nothing bad to say.
If you're a grown adult man, unless your name is Sammy Davis Jr., you should not be wearing rings.
I actually agree with that. The girl I dated in high school, I told her, even if we got married, I would never wear a wedding ring.
Yes. I guess if you're married, there's an exception. But yeah, you shouldn't be wearing rings if you're a man. That's just, I mean, even if you win like the Stanley Cup or something, you get the ring, but you don't wear it. You put it in a drawer somewhere.
I don't wear any jewelry personally, so.
All right, but anyway.
Back to the story.
Yeah, so Green Lantern, he's like, yeah, I'm Green Lantern. Let's go talk. Now I'm thinking, they're going to go get a cup of coffee or something. Nope. What do they do, Michael?
He gives him, does he have another ring, or is this just a... He gives him another ring. So now this guy is flying around, and in a Green Lantern costume, of course, but without a mask. And
well, in fairness, he probably had that Green Lantern costume at his house.
Yeah, that's true. In his closet, yeah. Now they're flying around. So he's in a duplicate Green Lantern costume, and they're basically just chatting up about what this job is of his. And he starts kind of, explaining, it's this group, elite design consultants, blah blah blah. He's explaining what it is, and Hal Jordan's kind of just thinking about whether or not, he's like, well, there's no way I can give Chip my name and social security number, not with him knowing who I really am. Too bad, too. Having a friend would be nice. And so that becomes one of the conflicts of the story, is that he wants to take this job, but he can't give away his secret identity, but he wants to have a new friend, so blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's desperate for love and affection, this Green Lantern.
I think Hal Jordan...
pretty sure he wanted to bang Chip at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty down on his luck at this point. But again, I don't really know where this fits into the Green Lantern, chronology. Like I said, I don't really know exactly what was going on.
Well, let me say this, Michael.
Yep.
I did do a little research on these aeronautical people.
Okay.
Whatever the hell their names were. They call them, their nicknames, the Gremlins, and we meet them. We meet 3 other people later. But I guess their first appearance was in Action Comics.
There you go.
21.
Right. Okay.
And then I think they've only made 4 appearances total, I think.
Really?
Yeah, so it seems weird that they're making this big a deal of them in Secret Origins, and they're not even that popular. Well, like, I thought this would be a big story arc for Hal Gordon's character. Like, he spent years working with them, but apparently...
Wait, did you say Hal Gordon?
Oh, Hal Jordan.
Yeah, Hal Jordan. Sorry, it's funny.
He's Hal Gordon.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's almost like this is like a pilot for Hal Jordan's next adventure. But you're right. If there's only 4 more appearances by these guys, it seems kind of pointless, right? Like,
if you're like, I expected you to know all about these people and like all.
No.
But yeah, so if you don't even know who they are, I'm guessing they must have only been there for like 4 issues.
Right. Maybe they were being set up for something, and then the next writer came in and just ditched it all. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, whoever that guy is, I want to shake his hand.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Okay. So then. Sorry. Go ahead.
Like one other little trivia tidbit here. Do you know Green Lantern's first appearance? What issue it was?
Yeah, Showcase 22.
Holy hell, that is correct. Yeah. Showcase 22 from 1959. All right.
That's right. Yep. I believe he was the second superhero rebooted in the 50s, right, by DC after Flash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then they did Hawkman, and then they did the Atom. Anyway.
All right.
Sorry, I was just reading that from my dating profile. Anyway, okay, let's get back to this. Anyway, okay, so, ideally, a Secret Origins story would just have the origin, but unfortunately, in this story, it's a present-day story in which we flash back to the origin, so it's a little bit awkward. I don't like that, but fine. So basically, Hal Jordan explains how he became Green Lantern to this guy, and we flash back to, like we said, Showcase 22, basically, and we find out that this alien named Abin Sur, who was the Green Lantern of Section 2814, his spaceship crashed on Earth, And then whenever Green Lantern is dying, the ring sends out this kind of like signal or whatever to find someone else to replace him. And so it has to find someone who's completely without fear. So it found Hal Jordan, who was in the middle of, I never really got this, but he was in this, what's it called? A test.
Like a flight simulator.
Flight simulator, right. But the flight simulator was sort of activated by the ring and actually flies through the air to bring him to where Abin Sur is at this crashed spaceship. So then Hal Jordan goes in and meets Abin Sur. And then, of course, we see a speech bubble where he says, "Come in, Hal Jordan." And then Hal Jordan thinks to himself, "Good gosh, a spaceman communicating with me by telepathy," which I'm sure is probably the original dialogue, right, from 1959.
I don't know. Maybe.
So basically, yeah, so he gives a quick rundown of what's going on and how he's going to give him the ring. And basically, that's it. He's like, "You must be the new Green Lantern." He gives him the ring. And then do they show it that he dies, or is that later? Yeah, but he basically dies there after that. And then we cut back to the present, and he's still flying around with this guy. Now Chip. They've made it, with Chip. They've made it to Oa, which is, I believe it's the center of the galaxy, which is the former home of the Guardians of the Universe. You know, Marvel has the Guardians of the Galaxy. DC's got the Guardians of the Universe, okay?
Now, who are they? Would I know any of these people?
No. The Guardians of the Universe are basically, they're all little people. They're blue-skinned aliens that are all like midget-sized. They wear like these red kind of cloaks. And they're the alien race that created the Green Lantern Corps like thousands of years ago or millions of years ago. Yeah. And so basically their job is they're kind of like the security council of the galaxy or the universe. And the Green Lanterns are their police force. But in a previous storyline, I believe they were all killed, or I don't know what happened, but they're not there anymore. So this planet is virtually empty now as they're flying around. And so they go to this giant. So for those that don't know, so Green Lantern has to repower his ring every 24 hours by sort of like charging it with the big lantern that he has. But I believe it's once a year he has to fly back to Oa and he has to recharge his lantern with this big lantern. And so they fly back to the lantern and it's all smashed open and no one's there. Oh, sorry. So then now, he flashes back to Abin Sur talking to him, and this is the scene where Abin Sur finally dies, right? And so he's finished explaining everything about the Green Lantern, then he dies, and then we cut back to the present, and Chip has heard a noise, and so obviously something's going on in Oa. It's not as empty as they thought, and then it's revealed that there's a couple aliens that are on this planet, and they don't really. What happens here? They kind of just take off, and then
they're like scavengers.
They're
getting the ruins of the planet, and Chip launches right after him like a true superhero. This Chip guy, he's flying to different galaxies. He's got his own power ring. And
he's taking it all in stride. Yeah,
he's living the dream. Yeah.
Yep. He's not really overly affected by it. He kind of just goes with the flow. Yep.
Like an average day for Chip.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, Green Lantern, so they're fighting these guys now, and one of the aliens shoots at Chip, but Chip doesn't know about the yellow impurity, and so he's not prepared for what happens. But this dude's laser blast goes through Chip's green energy shield.
Yeah.
But then nothing really happens to him. But then Hal Jordan sort of ends up saving the day by capturing these aliens. And then that's pretty much it. He sends these aliens on their way, and then it's back to business for these guys, talking about the job and all that. Salary's negotiable, hours are flexible, blah, blah, blah. But Hal Jordan still doesn't think he can take the job because he's afraid of giving away his secret identity, right?
Well, let me ask you this, Michael. They stop off on a rooftop so they could call their buddy Hawk.
Yes.
He was supposed to be the test pilot. And Hawk is very 1989. He has a flat top fade. It's tremendous. And he's talking on this enormous cell phone. So it's all pretty awesome. But so Green Lantern hooks up some TV monitor and a phone for Chip with his power ring. And then he starts charging his power ring with his lantern. So where did this lantern come from? Like, can he just bring it out into existence out of nowhere?
It's a great question, because if he could do that, then what would he need? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're right. He's generating the lantern that he's going to charge the ring with his ring. It makes no sense. I'm not sure.
He just had this lantern stashed on this rooftop.
Unless they're on the rooftop of his building, maybe. Maybe that's it. I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
I have no idea either. And so basically, yeah. So we're introduced to these characters again. Like you said, it's like they're building them up to be this big thing, and like I assume it's kind of like I said, this is like a backdoor pilot for the upcoming adventures of Green Lantern and Action Comics Weekly. Yeah. And so basically, then in the last scene, Hal Jordan is now meeting these gremlins. And we kind of
that's their nickname, the Gremlins.
Yeah, the Gremlins. And so we're kind of getting like a foreshadowing of, this guy's the cool guy. This other guy here in the back is the mysterious one. This one's the girl. And that's pretty much it.
This one's the girl.
Yeah, this is the girl. There's really no personality to her. But and so that's basically it. So now Hal Jordan is going to accept this job, and this is going to be his status quo for the time being. And that's it. And then it says beginning.
Yeah, the beginning. That's how it ends. The beginning. Yeah. ... The beginning of what though? Because apparently they're only in 4 issues. So.
Yeah, I know. Well, like I said, I'm going to only assume that maybe either a different writer took over, or I don't know what happened. But yeah, clearly the status quo did not last long.
Here's my big problem with this story: is this book is entitled Secret Origins.
Yes.
What did we learn here that we didn't know?
That's what's funny. Nothing.
Yeah.
The book is called Secret Origins, but none of these origins are really secret. Maybe like 1% of them, so.
Like I thought, maybe this is the secret origin of how Jordan, or Gordon, whatever you want to call him, how he met these Gremlins people. And, they must have this huge ongoing story arc for like many years. But yeah, like these characters are apparently irrelevant. So what's the point of all this? That's my problem.
I don't know. That's a great question, but yeah, it's again, this shouldn't have been an issue of Secret Origins. It should have been just a story in Green Lantern or Action Comics Weekly.
I would have preferred if it just was a story in like a waste paper basket.
Okay, whatever. Okay. So now we're gonna move on to the main point of this issue, and that's the Secret Origin of Pieface. So, for those that don't know, Hal Jordan in the 1960s had a Eskimo sidekick named Pieface. Yes.
well, his real name. Do you know his real name?
Yeah. What is it here? It's Kalmuka.
Thomas Kalmaku, I believe.
Oh, Tomaku, right.
I believe. And his first appearance was in Green Lantern 2 in 1960.
Okay.
There you go.
So you did do research. Okay.
I had to look up Pieface.
Oh, right, of course. So basically, we should point out quickly, this is written by Gerard Jones and drawn by Joe Staton. I think it's Staton. Joe Staton, he had a long run in Green Lantern in the 80s. He also I believe he did the Justice Society revival in the 70s in All-Star Comics, at least part of it. Yeah. And then he went on to do like, I think he's the official Dick Tracy artist now for the Daily Strip, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of his art. I mean, some people think it's a little cartoony, but I really like it. Gerard Jones was kind of like a Silver Age style writer for DC in the 80s and 90s. He did Justice League. He did El Dorado or El Diablo, a bunch of different books. And then unfortunately, his career kind of crashed and burned when it was discovered that he was distributing and or creating child pornography. And so now his career has come to a grinding halt because he's in jail. But anyway.
He could work in the U.S. government.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
So there you go. So I had no idea this character existed.
Okay.
Because again, I don't know much about Green Lantern. But apparently when Hal Jordan was a test pilot, this guy was like the mechanic.
Right.
And he gave him the name Pieface because the guy is an Eskimo. And Hal Jordan says, an Eskimo? Huh? Or a real Eskimo, huh? The only Eskimo I've ever met was an Eskimo pie. How about if I call you Pieface? What?
Oh, yeah.
Slightly terrible.
Racially insensitive. Yeah, pretty rough there.
That is brutal. And then he even, we should say the story is, this is years late, in the present. And our buddy, we're going to call him Thomas.
Sure.
He's talking to his kids because his wife's trying to cook dinner and the kids are bugging her. So she says, go in and talk to your dad. Have him tell you some stories. Because I guess he was Green Lantern's sidekick, and he would document all their adventures, and he kept journals, diaries of their adventures. So he likes to read the story. He's got a little girl and a little boy, and he reads the stories to him. And after he tells him that Pieface stuff, he says, Hal hadn't had much political sensitivity drummed into him yet. But then he adds, I think maybe I liked him better that way. And then the kids are like, can we have an Eskimo pie? And he's like, no, you can't. Never mention that.
So, I mean, what's that?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Tell the rest of the story.
I was going to say, yeah. So do you want to talk about, so basically, he's talking to his kids, flashing back to how he met Hal Jordan, how he got the name Pieface. And then there's this really weird part of the story where he notices that Hal Jordan uses an odd kind of punch.
Well, and apparently he had half our buddy Thomas here, he had half of a treasure map or something.
Yes,
and some guys came to beat him up to get the rest of the map. And Hal Jordan came upon him and he says, hey, lay off my buddy. And he grabs the one guy and punches him with like a shovel uppercut, we like to call it. A weird little uppercut. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. But I am happy to see a punch.
Okay.
In comic book,
for once, yep.
It's been a while since we've seen a punch. And so he clocks the dude. And then our buddy Thomas is like, hey, thanks. And but then Hal Jordan just says, all right, yeah, take it easy, buddy. I'm out of here. He just doesn't care. But Green Lantern shows up.
Yep.
He says, hey, Hal Jordan told me you have some trouble.
Yeah. No, but wait, I just ran into Hal Jordan and he told me about your problem. So basically, he's going to lend him a hand with this map. He goes into his unconscious and he finds trace memories of the stolen map. And
now,
he's
can he do that? Is that a thing Green Lantern can do?
Well, sometimes they can kind of do whatever the writers need him to do, to be honest. So then he's like, with this, we should be able to get at least halfway to that mine. And so they go, so then basically now it cuts to, they're in, I believe this is Alaska, right?
Something like that,
yeah. And so basically, they find the guys that had beat up Thomas earlier, and Green Lantern once again uses, what is the punch called?
We'll call it a shovel uppercut.
Shovel uppercut. So he notices, he's like, where have I seen that punch before? And so he's like, he figures out that he's Green Lantern. Yeah. So then he offers to be his assistant, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and so Green Lantern's like, great. He's like, if there's one man a test pilot has to trust, it's his mechanic. So then this is where they become partners, right? And then we're cutting back to the present, and they're it's kind of cool because Thomas is alluding to how their friendship and partnership kind of dissolved. And I mean, I didn't really read many of those stories, so I don't know exactly what happened there, but he kind of just subtly alludes to that. Like he's kind of, you can tell he's kind of sad about it, and that's pretty much it. Then it kind of just wraps up.
Well, it wraps up with a nice little, a terrible joke, I should say.
So he's like, for a poor boy from the North Country, I guess I've done pretty well. I finally got my, and his wife says, your piece of the pie, if you must put it that way. And then off camera, we hear the kids, Daddy, I want a piece of pie too. Wah, 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 right?
Now, apparently this Thomas fella, he was a part of some superhero team for a while.
Was he?
I want to say it may have been the Guardians of the Universe or whatever. It sounded something like that. And his power, they gave him a power that made him bring out the best in other people.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I know what you're talking about. I believe you're talking about the new Guardians of the Universe.
Oh, okay.
Completely different.
All right.
And that came out of the event. Yeah, he was in the new Guardians. Do you remember the event Millennium?
No.
So there was Crisis, then there was Legends, then there was Millennium. Millennium was DC's 1988 big crossover event, right? Yeah. And that basically, it's a long story, but basically out of that, we had the new Guardians of the Universe. And I guess I never realized he was on that team, but yeah, I guess he was one of them.
I mean, that's kind of a nice, wholesome power, you bring out the best in other people. It's interesting. It would have been terrible if he's like, all right, what are you going to do? We're going to give you a power here, Thomas. You can make ice cream sandwiches.
Yeah. I don't know. Oh, ridiculous. Yeah.
There you go. So that's the secret origin of our buddy Pieface. And now, Michael, the main event.
That's right. The main event.
That's what you wanted.
Poison Ivy, written by Neil Gaiman. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the story is from the point of view of this psychologist, I guess, who is we're introduced to him watching this TV monitor of Poison Ivy in her prison cell in, I believe it's Arkham Asylum. I'm not sure.
No. She's not in Arkham yet.
Oh, she's not.
She's just in a regular prison.
Okay. So he's kind of watching her and he's kind of narrating her. And one of the things he says at the beginning is he's like, you can turn down the sound, but you can't turn off the picture. So he's watching her voyeuristically in her little cell. And he's narrating as he goes along the people that he's meeting at this hospital. It's
a ladies' prison.
It's a ladies' prison, is it? Okay.
Yeah, because all the guards are ladies. And when he's walking in, the ladies are like catcall him and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then, so basically, yeah, so he is brought into Poison Ivy's cell, and Poison Ivy immediately casts a spell over him. And he basically falls in love with her, which is sort of one of her powers, I believe.
And it's also sort of hard to believe because the art here makes her look repugnant.
Yeah, you know what's funny is Poison Ivy is supposed to look like Betty Page, right? And in this issue, I agree with you. In some panels, she looks grotesque.
Yes. We'll talk about the art and the writing. I did research the creators for this one.
Okay. So. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But basically, she's kind of getting under his skin. And, as soon as they sit down and start to talk, and he explains that, he's doing this project for certain prisoners. He's going to examine their files, blah, blah, blah. And then right away in his narration, he admits, he's like lies, of course. Not a word about Belle Reeve. But it sounds likely, and I've had worse cover stories. Sorry, what were we going to say?
Well, I think he's actually there. He's recruiting for the Suicide Squad.
Right. Yes. I believe you're correct. I don't really know because I didn't really read Suicide Squad, so I don't know if she became a member or...
Yeah, but he alludes to he's looking, in his thoughts, he's thinking, I can't tell her I'm looking for criminals to go on suicide missions or something like that. Something like that. So
right, yeah.
I'm guessing that's why he's there.
So basically, he's chatting it up with Poison Ivy, and then she starts to hint at certain things. Like one of the things that he says is, I've got different files on you, lots of different files. They can't even agree on your name. Pamela Isley, Lillian Rose, and then she's like, it's Pamela Lillian Isley. That's the name on my birth certificate. And were you going to say something?
Well, I think they say the FBI just had her name wrong in the file. That's
right. And so this is I think I said this earlier, but basically it's kind of like alluding to the pre-crisis origin. Yeah. Now this is the post-crisis origin. So basically she's just saying that she made up that other name, so that kind of explains the way the continuity glitches in DC's history.
And then he gets called away because we should also mention that when he goes to see Poison Ivy, all the female guard and the warden, they're all saying, be careful. She's going to eat you for lunch.
Right.
She just devours men and all that. So then, while he's already smitten with her, the guard comes and says, hey, you got to call. Someone's calling for you. So he has to leave. And Poison Ivy blows him a kiss, and it could be the least attractive thing I've ever seen.
Ew, but it's better than the panel right below it of Paula, anyway, I think,
Yeah, Paula's the prison guard.
Yeah, So we're introduced to this prison guard, Paula Goldblum, and Paula Goldblum, this kind of goes along, but Paula is attracted to him, but he's sort of becoming obsessed with Poison Ivy. And the next page, we see that he's watching her on this monitor, but as far as he knows, Poison Ivy does not know that there's a camera in her room, and there's a shot here of him stripping, and then the camera
stripping.
Of Poison, yeah. Did I say him? Oops.
Yes.
Of Poison Ivy stripping.
That's a completely different scene.
Yeah.
If he's watching her, he starts stripping.
Yeah. Exactly. So his pants are around his ankles. But anyway, okay. So he's watching her strip, and then basically. So now we cut to him sitting in, I believe this is the cafeteria, right? At the prison?
Well, yeah, they go to get some coffee, him and Paula, because Paula, she wants to get a piece of this. I think his name's Stuart, right? Stuart,
yes.
His last name?
Right, yeah.
And she wants to go out on a date with him after work. So, but the whole time they're there, he just wants to talk about Poison Ivy.
Right. He keeps bringing her up, which really irritates her. So then we cut back to another day where now he's, he's back in the cell with her, and she starts revealing her wait for it, secret origin.
Yes.
Which we actually didn't know before this. So this is her real origin. So she talks about growing up, her mom and pop. She was rich. She was obsessed with plants. She always wanted to be a botanist. She liked flowers and plants. And basically, she also talks about the fact that guys did not find her attractive. She was overweight. She had buck teeth, stupid hair, she says, but she was always obsessed with plants. And so she's talking, and so blah, 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 she's talking about it. And then basically she says that she started working with someone who you're familiar with, Mike Dell,
Yes. Yep.
Jason Woodrue.
Yeah. The Floronic Man.
Yep.
We met him in a Swamp Thing issue. Was that 2 weeks ago, I think?
That was, 2 weeks ago, right. Isn't it funny how everything ties together? Anyway.
Yeah.
So basically, they're working together, and then she explains that he gave her, he was experimenting her and actually giving her poison, right? But instead of killing her, ended up making her immune to all poisons, which is kind of her power. Like I said earlier, it's kind of, she kind of, I don't know, I think over the years they've kind of altered what she can do, but yeah, so she's immune to poison, she can kind of control plants, and she has this magical effect over men.
Yeah, and the pheromones to seduce the men. Now, but when people touch her, can she poison them?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's by choice. She can release poison from her lips or whatever. Yeah.
Because Michael, I want to get I like to get literary here.
Sure.
Basically, the Poison Ivy character was taken from an 1844 short story written by Nathaniel Hawthorne called Rappaccini's Daughter.
Really?
Yes. It's about this Italian fella who's kind of like an evil scientist, and he wants to protect his daughter. So he grows all these plants, these poisonous plants in his garden, and his daughter grows up with them, so she becomes immune to their poisons. And he doesn't let anyone get near his daughter. He keeps her in this walled-in garden, and she's immune to these poisons. But here, this fella next door spies her one day, and he says, oh, he falls in love with her instantly, so he tries to visit her in the garden, but she can't touch him because she would poison him. And he comes back with an antidote, and he's like, here we go. Take this antidote, and that'll cure you. But it doesn't cure her. It actually kills her. Spoiler alert.
Whoa. Oh, I believe I've heard of this story, but I had no idea. So you're saying Robert Kanigher did not come up with this concept, really?
No. Technically, I think even Nathaniel Hawthorne took it from somewhere else, but at least elements of it. But Rappaccini's Daughter is the origin of Poison Ivy specifically. And even you could say Rogue.
Interesting. Okay.
The heroine who can't be touched and controlling the plants.
Sure.
And whatnot. So there you go.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So basically, so then she kind of mentions Batman, right? And so now we get a really
falls in love with Batman. Her room looks like my Oscar room and Chip's Green Lantern.
I know. I was going to say it's the exact same thing.
She's got Batman everywhere.
Right. She actually has an issue of Amazing Heroes on her wall, which is an awesome fanzine from the 80s. But anyway.
Wow. See, I did not know that.
It was basically I don't know how to explain it. Do you remember Wizard magazine?
Yeah, I used to get Wizard.
Yeah, so this was the Wizard of the 80s, but it was much better written.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we get some and now the image on the cover there is by David Mazzucchelli from in year one. Yep. And then we get on the bottom right of that panel on original page 8, we get a little Silver Age Batman and Robin, right? And then the next panel kind of looks like Brian Bolland from The Killing Joke, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he puts that cape. You can tell by the cape, pointy edge of the cape.
Right. And then the bottom panel is right out of the 60s, right? I think that's supposed to be Carmine Infantino, maybe. I'm not sure, but
yeah, that definitely looks like Carmine Infantino. And but yeah, she falls in love with Batman, so she tries to get his attention by becoming a criminal genius.
Right.
But at the bottom panel, Michael, of that Carmine Infantino inspired art, I love that Robin is looking at Poison Ivy kissing Batman, and he's just nonchalantly punching this guy.
Yeah, I know.
And this guy's flipping.
I know, it's awesome.
He's upside down and he's screaming.
Maybe he's using that same punch Hal Jordan used earlier.
Yeah, the old shovel uppercut.
There you go.
But this looks like a lead right, a right hook maybe.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Not the same punch. So at least when he's not Green Lantern, and we know that, right? So
yes. Not that crazy punch.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then Batman, arrests her and she goes to prison and whatnot. And there you go.
Yeah. And so that's basically it. So she kind of covers, her action, what we saw in the comics in the 1960s or whatever. So then we cut back to Stewart talking to her. And, basically, he's narrating all along. Where we see images of Poison Ivy, but now he's agreed to go on another date with Paula. And then it's kind of cool because, this is 1989, so we can't really show it, but we cut to a shot of a door handle with a do not disturb sign on it. And he's narrating, he's like, more coffee with Paula. We go back to my hotel room together. And then during the night I dream and I call it a name and wake up. I'm saying Ivy, Ivy, and Paula's awake next to me. She doesn't say anything, but I can tell she's awake from her breathing. So basically, he is obsessed with Poison Ivy, but this girl likes him. And he just had sex with her, but he's still thinking about Poison Ivy.
Yeah, he made the sweet, sweet love to her, but in his mind, he's really making sweet, sweet love to Poison Ivy. But here's the problem, though, Michael. Just before that, a couple panels before, we find out that he's married with kids.
You know what's funny? I completely didn't even notice that. Yeah. So he's
creep.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's cheating on his wife and kids, and he's obsessed with a third woman.
Yes. Now, do you think Poison Ivy monkeyed with his brain so much that he can't control himself, or that he's just an asshole?
I think he's probably just an asshole. Yeah, he's probably just an asshole. Yeah.
So anyway.
So basically. So then he goes back to the prison, and he has this new thing where he wants to talk to Poison Ivy on her own outside, and so he basically he kind of forces them to let him do it. So he brings her outside, and they're chatting it up, and then she kind of again sucks him in and is talking, and then he kind of looks down and sees that his hand has been burned by her poison.
Yeah, she had touched his hand.
Right.
And he got these big welts and blisters on his hand. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she we get some really ugly depictions of his face as this is going on. But now she's, which we can talk more about later, but she's also using her plant powers to kind of wrap these weeds and grass around him to kind of hold him down. And then she gives him a kiss on the cheek. And then finally the guards kind of come in to help him out. So they've got their guns pointed at him, and they lead her away. And he's kind of left on his own. And he's like, well, my face itches where she kissed me. Blah blah blah. He looks in the mirror, and there's actually like an imprint of her lips on his cheek. And he's like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to my wife, right?
Yeah, or Paula.
Yeah, or Paula. Exactly. So now he's back on his own, and he's looking at the monitor, and now he realizes that she did know that the camera was there all along because she's talking to it. Stuart, you won't forget, will you? I have to get out of here. So she's trying to use her, persuasive abilities to convince him to get her out of this prison. And basically it just ends with him talking about her and, finishing his report of what she is. And then he's like, I'm sorry, pretty Ivy, Poison Ivy, crazy Ivy. You can turn the sound down. Or you can turn down the sound, but you can't turn off the picture. And the last shot is Poison Ivy just sort of screaming towards the camera, and that's it.
Well, the other big thing here is you see a panel before that, like the second to last panel of him giving his recommendation of what to do with her, and he just writes Arkham Asylum.
Right. Yes.
So he wants her committed to the real strict prison.
She's too crazy for Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, an interesting thing I just noticed going through this, like the entire issue, all the gutters, like between the panels, was all colored red. And then on the last page, it's like normal, just white.
I never noticed that. Look at that.
But I don't know why was that an accident? Was that intentional? Was it supposed to signify something? Yes.
Huh, I don't know. Maybe this is where he's kind of broken the spell. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, let me go back to let's see if the beginning of the story.
Yeah, I just checked. The whole thing is red. Yep.
Okay. Well, then there goes that idea. Because if it was white before he met her and then red after, that would have been cool. But it's probably just they fucked up. All right.
The last page was probably a mistake, but it was definitely intended to be red for the whole thing, for the rest of it at least.
So there you go. That's and the story we should mention is called Pavon, which is and Old Medieval Dance.
Oh, really?
Yes, I didn't know that. I had to look it up.
Ah, okay. I thought maybe it was just something you came across in your English studies.
No, I had no
Okay.
idea. But then you could pick it up from context later because she says her and Batman are do the pavane of seduction or something.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But anyway, so yeah, this story was written by Neil Gaiman, and we've talked about him. I think last week on the show we brought him up for some reason, right?
Right. I think because we said that Doctor Strange reminded us of Sandman.
Yeah, and we were talking about Vertigo and DC and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Because poor Carrot said he read that stuff. All right. So Neil Gaiman was born in Hampshire, England in 1960. In the early 80s, he was pursuing journalism and doing interviews and book reviews when he published his first short story in 1984. And that same year, he was waiting for a train at Victoria Station, and he picked up a copy of Swamp Thing by Alan Moore.
Really?
And he was hooked. And that's what convinced him to get into comics, by reading Swamp Thing. Also in 1984, he published his first book. Do you know what his first book was?
No, I don't. No.
A biography of Duran Duran.
Are you kidding me?
That is correct.
Wow. Okay, now I've got to read that.
Yes. In 1986-87, he published his first stuff in comic books in 2000 AD. We mentioned this before. Who else broke in 2000 AD? Well, I think Alan Moore.
Alan Moore, I believe, and Grant Morrison. They did work there for sure. I'm not sure if it was their first work, but they definitely worked on that. Yep.
Yeah, it's a weekly British sci-fi comics magazine, and I think he did 4. I think they call them Future Shocks or something. Little stories. And he also did 3 graphic novels with artist Dave McKean during this time. Yeah. And DC took notice of those, and they hired him in 1987. And his first gig was a 3-issue Black Orchid limited series, also drawn by McKean. So he continued collaborating. Now, do you know anything about Black Orchid, Michael?
Not much. I just know that she was a DC superheroine in the 70s, I think, right?
Well, this seems like a completely different story then, because what I read about it was like these 2 young girls just find themselves in a greenhouse one day and they don't know where they came from or who they are, and then they interact with DC superheroes along the way.
Well, it's just like Sandman. Like all Neil Gaiman did was he took the name Sandman that was already around for 40 years and he just created Morpheus, right? In that whole, I don't know if you know anything about Sandman, but yeah, he created.
I do not.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have to get into it now, but he basically just took the name Sandman, which had been used by DC for 2 separate characters, one in the 40s and then one in the 70s by Jack Kirby, and he just took the name and just created a whole new concept, and that became the Sandman of the 90s. So I think he did the same thing with Black Orchid.
And the Black Orchid success did eventually they gave him Sandman then, and that started in 1989 and it ran to 1996, 75 issues.
Yep.
I always knew it was popular back then, because wasn't there a character named Death? He was like a teenage girl or something?
Yes, that's his sister. Yep.
Yeah. So she became real popular, and I remember seeing them, but I never read any of it. So did you read all the Sandmen?
I did not read all of them, but I did read at least maybe half of it, I would say. And it's all really good. Yeah.
And I guess he did some Death limited series then as well?
Yes, that's correct. Death, the High Cost of Living, I believe. Yep.
That was one of them. And he also did a Riddler story for Secret Origins Special number 1 in 1989.
That one's coming up soon in the next year or so. Yep.
Wow, can't wait. But that actually has a famous cover. Like I'm actually familiar with that cover, even though I've never read that issue. It's got the Penguin, Two-Face, and Riddler, and then like a shadow of Batman on the wall behind them.
That's right. Yeah. That was all at the height of Batmania, right?
That's right. Yeah, this is '89. This is all happening. And,
yeah.
The height of Batmania.
Yep.
So yeah, Gaiman's done a shit ton of stuff, but really when it comes to comics like Sandman, he also did Miracle Man a little bit, right?
Oh yes, that's absolutely right. Yep.
He took over for Alan Moore on Miracle Man.
And I should point out that he when he was on Miracle Man, he unfortunately worked with the same artist.
Yes, I was going to.
Not a huge fan of. So yeah.
All right, so yeah, let's get into the artist then. Let's bring him up because I don't have a lot about him. But Marc Buckingham is the artist, and he was born in the UK in 1966. His first work that I could tell was Hellblazer 18 to 22 in 1989. And of course, this was also 1989. So when you're looking at this art, this is him at 23 years old breaking into the business.
Okay.
Right? So then he did Miracle Man 17 to 24 in 1992. So I'm guessing that art may have been a little bit better than this.
Not in my opinion.
Okay.
No.
And that was also with Neil Gaiman. Then he did He did a Death Limited series with Gaiman in 1996, but it wasn't The High Cost of Living. It was called something else.
Okay.
But then what he's most famous for, Michael, is from 2002 to 2015. He did a comic called Fables.
Oh yes.
And he did a shit ton of those issues from issue 6 to 150. Like he didn't do that entire run, but just about.
Right.
Probably about 85% of the books from that run. And I got to tell you, this art here, I don't like it because it seems it reminded me a lot of early Michael Golden and how it like seemed sketchy and unfinished and just like the faces were not good, and they would change appearances from panel to panel.
Right.
So it seemed like a young guy trying to find his way. But I went ahead and I looked at his art from Fables, and it's actually really good.
Okay.
It's really clean, and it reminds me because he also did a lot of inking.
Okay.
What I mentioned were basically his main penciling credits, but he also did a lot of inking. But this Fable stuff, it was very reminiscent of like Paul Smith, Alan Davis.
Okay.
Very clean lines and, smooth. So, yeah.
See, I read the first trade of Fables, but I don't remember if it went up to number 6 or not. So I'm not sure if I ever saw his art. But I don't remember thinking the art was great, but maybe I didn't come across him.
And again, that's a very long run, 2002 to 2015. So I'm sure somewhere along there he got much, he kept improving, I'm sure.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I was impressed when I saw the Fables art. So it's not, you wouldn't know the same guy did that.
Sure.
Because this art here isn't so good. But,
no, didn't he also do Spider-Man? Like Spectacular Spider-Man or something?
I didn't see that listed.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I could have just missed it. But,
all right.
So there you go, Marc Buckingham. How about Neil Gaiman's story? What did you think of the story?
Oh, well, I mean, I thought it was excellent, personally. I thought it was, Neil Gaiman at this point, even though he was still, early in his career, he was, the fact that he followed Alan Moore in Miracle Man, he was obviously writing sort of like Alan Moore, right? So, compared to, again, you can just compare it to the other two stories in this issue, and I think it's infinitely better. Personally.
Yeah, it's much more like literary.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like the story a lot. I was like the way it ended is fine. But I almost was hoping Poison Ivy would like drive that guy insane or something to the point where he just kills himself. That's what I was hoping.
Yeah, they could have gone further with it. That's true.
Yeah. But it's a good solid story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the art definitely, because Poison Ivy, she should be like looking like a smoking hot lady,
Right.
And so the art really undermined the story a lot. But
like the thing is, it's almost like the art. It's hard to explain, but like it's almost like if you squint, it looks good. But then it's like he knows how to lay out the panels, but like the actual faces just don't look human sometimes. It's like he just hasn't figured out what to draw and what not to draw, because it's like he's emphasizing the wrong things on Poison Ivy's face. Like he just makes her look so ugly, eh?
It's very unattractive. And even the guy, the Stewart, whatever his name was, his appearance would change from page to page. Like there were some panels where he looks exactly like Peyton Manning.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the American footballers, Michael.
I've heard of Peyton Manning. Yep.
All right.
Well, because the thing is that, like, that's one of the things about art is consistency is one of the hardest things about drawing comics, is because, like you said, from panel to panel, the characters have to look the same, the proportions have to be the same, and that's not easy. So it's obvious that he has talent, but he's just sort of amateur at this point.
Yeah, again, this is his first year working in comics, so this is what it is. So should we rate this issue?
Oh boy! Well,
overall, what's the overall rating for the entire issue, Mike?
Boy, well, okay. First, I'm going to break it down. The Poison Ivy one, I'll give an 8, just because the story is so good, the art is okay, so I'll give it an 8.
Even with the art, you'd give that an 8?
Yeah, I still give it an 8, because I think the art, at least it tells the story, so I think it's okay. The Pieface one, I'll give it a 6 because I like Joe Staton's art. The writing's not bad. The Green Lantern one, honestly, I think it's the worst because if you took out the fact that it's just rehashing an actual good story from 1959, the actual issue itself, I think, is junk. I mean, yeah, like the writing is not great. Even though I know Jim Owsley is a good writer, the writing's not great. The art by M.D. Bright or Mark Bright, it's pretty ugly. It's not great.
It's fine. It's better than Buckingham. Well, it depends what you like. But I mean, it's very late 80s, early 90s art.
Yeah. And I've seen him do a little bit better too. So he does get better, I guess. But yeah,
I had no huge problem with the art. But it's like definitely from that era, though. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I didn't hate it, but I'll give it I'll give the Green Lantern story a 4. So if you average out, what was that? 4, 6, and 8. What's that? A 5? 4, 6.
Wait, a 4, 6, and 8 would be 18.
6.
So that'd be a 6 overall. Yeah.
Yeah, 6.
I'll give the Poison Ivy story a 6.
Okay.
Because the art just it's terrible.
Ruins it. Like okay.
Yeah. And the Pieface story, I like the fact that he's getting some attention.
Okay.
Because obviously he suffered a lot throughout his life being called Pieface, so it's nice that he gets some attention. Sure. So I'll give that like a 4.
Okay.
And then the Green Lantern, like a 2. So there you go. That's that would be a 4 overall.
Oh boy.
So, yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
So if it was just the Neil Gaiman story, it would be a 6, you said? Oh, all right.
Because I'm less forgiving of that art than you are.
Sure.
Like
yeah,
it
because
really,
no, yeah, it didn't. I don't think it hurt it. It's just that it was really.
Oh, it hurt it. Because Poison Ivy is supposed to be a seductress, and there is nothing seductive about her in this book.
No, that's true. I'll give you that. So. But anyway, so yeah, that wraps up Secret Origins number 36. So what is coming next?
All right, Mike, I'll get ready. You're going to be shocked at this.
Oh yeah, okay.
This is one of my picks. I haven't had a pick in a while. Okay. I'm going back to one of my favorite stories I remember as a kid. I had these issues. It's a DC book.
Whoa!
It's a DC book that features Batman.
Whoa! Are you kidding me? What is the world coming to?
I know. I feel bad for doing this. May God have mercy on my soul. But this is part 2 of a 3-part story, and it was written by Jerry Conway and drawn by George Perez.
Nice.
This is Justice League of America, issue 196 from 1981. I loved this story when I was a kid. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, Mike. Also, I should mention, for our buddy cousin Brandon, Psycho Pirate is in this story.
Wow.
But the way I balance out the fact that Batman's in here is it features a giant monkey.
Okay.
It's the Ultra Humanite when he's in the big white gorilla body.
Okay.
So there's a giant monkey. And also Batman gets beat up by a sea-level villain that I never heard of. And he gets defeated by this villain.
Is it Black Manta?
No, the guy. I think the guy's name is Signal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but basically the premise of this story, like I said, is a 3-issue arc. Is Ultra Humanite, who's this really smart dude whose brain is now inside of a body of a giant gorilla. He brings together all these villains.
Okay.
Some from Earth 2, some from Earth 1, I believe. And he says, we're going to take out these superheroes. We're going to knock them out. We're going to join forces to take out these heroes. And so over the course of the first 2 issues, one villain goes after one hero and they just take them out.
Oh, what's crazy? I think I have this.
It's a great story. I loved it as a kid. And so in the issue we will be reviewing next week, Batman gets his ass beat. Yeah. So.
Oh, look at that. I love that title. Countdown to Crisis. Great. And you realize now, because this is a comic that I would have read anyway, now I have to go and read every Jerry Conway issue, right, before I read this one.
I would definitely read the one before this and the one after so you can get the whole story, because it is a nifty little. But I always love stories where you get a group of villains going after a group of heroes, and I really like how they pick them off one at a time.
Sure, yeah.
And there are some villains in here that I wasn't aware of, I think Ragman.
Oh yeah, everyone knows Ragman.
Is it? Anyway. Or it might be Ragdoll actually, not Ragman.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a different character.
Yeah, Ragdoll is this guy.
Okay.
Mist, the Mist.
Okay.
Couple of, and then like Our Man. I totally forgot Our Man.
Oh yeah, of course. Love
He's
Our
in
Man.
here. He's a good guy, by the way, if you're scoring at home.
Oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's a great story. You get to see all the DC heroes get beat up. I love it. So
I've got a handful of issues from this era, and this is probably my favorite era of Justice League. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this for sure.
And I think my next pick after this, Micah, will also be a DC book.
Whoa, what is this world coming to?
I know,
Wow.
because I think I'm gonna go back to the ones I liked as a kid, and these,
Sure.
and so anticipate All-Star Squadron after this.
Oh, great.
There you go.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, I guess that wraps up this week's edition of Flea Market Fantasy, the podcast that reviews a different Bronze Age comic every week. This has been your co-host, Mike L. As always, I'm joined by Mike Dell. Until next Tuesday, this has been Flea Market Fantasy.